All right, it's 9 o'clock. So we're going to call the meeting to order. I'm only supposed to have to hammer the hammer once. Welcome to our meeting. It's the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments meeting on Wednesday, March 12th at 9 a.m. We will call to order and establish a quorum. Do we have a quorum, Jared? Okay, we have a quorum. Let's go around the table and introduce everybody, and then we'll introduce who's online. I'm Holly Williams, El Paso County Commissioner, and I am the chairman.
Good morning. I'm Kelly Case, the mayor of Woodland Park.
Good morning, Lynette Crow-Iverson, President Pro Tem City Council at Large, Colorado Springs.
Andy Gunning, PPACG.
Sharon Thompson, Mayor, City of Fountain.
John Graham, Mayor, City of Manitou Springs.
Todd Dixon, Mayor, Green Mountain Falls.
Bill Wysong, County Commissioner, District 3.
County Commissioner, District 4.
Amy Mitchell, Park County Commissioner.
Clint Heavner, Mayor of Palmer Lake.
Jeff Mosier, Special Projects Director for the City of Cripple Creek.
Jeff Bond, representing Colonel Clock and Space Base Delta 1, Peterson, Schriever, and Cheyenne Mountain.
Cheryl Richards, Office Manager for PPACG.
Okay, and let's go to see who we have online. I see that we have Mayor LeKind is online. It did.
I am online. Sorry,
yes.
I can't be there today.
That's okay. And Councilwoman Avila, is she available yet? Okay. We've got Will Shaw from Rayma. Oh, hang on. I've got a fantastic list. And Hannah Parsons, our Department of Transportation Commissioner. David Tookman from Fort Carson, and Colonel Dan Warner from the U.S. Air Force Academy. So thank you, everybody, for attending. All right, I will take a motion to approve the agenda as published.
Mayor Dixon also move.
I'll second.
Okay, that has been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. Public comments. Public comments can be made before or during the meeting. Public comments during the meeting is limited to 3 minutes and can be done at the meeting location or remotely by using the posted Microsoft Teams link. Individuals are encouraged to notify the meeting organizer at ppacg@ppacg.org before the start of the meeting with the agenda item they would like to comment on. Public comments can be submitted before the meeting via email to ppacg@ppacg.org for distribution to the committee members. Is there any public comment in the room? All right, and Jared, is there any public comment online or submitted?
We did not receive any submitted. I will ask anyone who's online who would like to provide public comment to please use the raise hand function at this time.
Okay.
Seeing no hands raised, I think we can proceed.
All right. Our second item is America 250 Colorado 150 Commission, Andrew Gunning, Executive Director, and Katie Roach, Program Director of America 250 Colorado 150 Commission. Is Katie available? Or go ahead, Andy, first.
I was just going to quickly hand it over to Katie. I think she's online. Appreciate her taking some time to brief the board on all the great events that are coming up next year. So Katie, take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for the invitation. I was hoping to be there in person, but sadly my tire had some other ideas late yesterday. So I'm joining you online from History, Colorado, where we are the home of the America 250 Colorado 150 Commission. And I'm here today to just inform you about this fantastic commemoration that is coming up starting next year, 2026, when we commemorate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, as well as Colorado's 150th anniversary of statehood. But not only am I here to give you information, I truly am here to invite you on behalf of the Commission to participate and find the ways that work best for your communities to take part in this commemoration. If I could have the next slide, please, that'd be great. Thank you. So just in a nutshell, what is this commemoration and how have our commissioners who have been appointed by Governor Jared Polis taken to view this? Really, they look at this as an opportunity to do two things. Number one, it's an opportunity for Coloradans to honor our shared history and commemorate our shared history. In this moment, we are truly dedicated to looking and examining and celebrating all of the communities that have participated in Colorado and in our history and have brought us to the moment that we are here today. In addition to that, I want to point out that commissioners are specifically appointed, excuse me, and are seated to represent Colorado state agencies. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm going to mute. I have a little bit of a sore throat. Apologies, I'm getting over a cold. And they have been seated specifically to represent Colorado's diverse communities, state agencies, in addition to our tribal nation partners here in Colorado. So, for example, we have Colorado Tourism represented, the Department of Education. We also have History Colorado representing the Department of Higher Education. But we also have commissioners who are seated to represent, again, various indigenous communities, Colorado's Black community, Colorado's Asian community, the Latino community, but also the business community, the philanthropic community, the small museum community. So our goal here really is that we have a representation across the board that we feel is accurately reflective of Colorado, in addition to creating the ability to do outreach, very deep outreach into our communities. So in part, that's how we are looking at engaging these communities in that piece where we are looking at commemorating our shared history. On the other hand, commissioners really do believe that this is an opportunity to bring communities together. When we looked at and researched the 1976 bicentennial centennial celebration, what we did understand is that at that moment, communities remembered that they came together. If you ask anyone about the bicentennial, and I do quite often around the state, I hear from people who talk about their neighborhood potlucks, their community fireworks celebration, going to visit that museum exhibition together. And so commissioners really do want to frame this as an opportunity to do both of those things. And so because of that, we have crafted our statewide signature initiatives. If I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, and we can actually skip over this one. I actually covered quite a bit of that as well. Thank you. We have an advisory panel, statewide representatives who are local stakeholders, local leaders who we do rely on quite often to help guide us, to make sure that this is not just specifically a Denver-centric commemoration, but that truly we are doing outreach into all areas of the state. The advisory panel members for your region are both Danielle Kitzman, who is based out of the Pueblo Chamber there, and former Mayor John Suthers. So we are very grateful for them, and I wanted to make sure to acknowledge his presence in this as well. Next slide. Thank you. And then we can move on to the next one as well. Thanks, Jared. So when we're talking about this big umbrella of what specifically the commission is looking to do here, and those two facets of this commemoration, we have actually we've come up with a handful of signature initiatives that are listed here, and I can go into detail on any of these if you have questions afterwards. These are signature initiatives that we are dedicated to both executing with state agencies and fundraising for. So there is an active fundraising effort afoot to make sure that we can do things like offer a passport program to the people of Colorado, that we can really start a new legacy program on historic markers in Colorado and community ability to nominate those markers, just as a few examples. However, what we are also doing is inviting communities to participate in this. If I could have the next slide, that would be great. Thank you. And then the next one. Thank you. So really what we are here to do today is to invite your communities to participate. Some of your communities already do have active efforts. Fountain specifically, Nate Schull is leading some of those efforts out of Fountain. What we are seeing is that communities are coming together, whether it is as a group, bringing local educators, local museum professionals, local historians, local city and county representatives to talk about what it is your community wants to do in this. The way that the commission is looking to support those local efforts is really threefold. Number one, our logo is free and available for anyone to use, including for-profit purposes. We really just want to see this everywhere all over Colorado. So if your local brewery wants to put this on their perfect interpretation of a Colorado day and sell that in 2026, they do not owe me any royalties. We are really hopeful to see this being used by Colorado communities, by local city governments, truly across the board. In addition to that, we have a statewide events calendar. We are using our bullhorn really to help you all make sure that Coloradans and folks around the nation know what is happening in Colorado, specifically around 2026. I do want to mention that it's come up a number of times where communities have said, we are deeply interested in participating. We already have a lot of things happening in our community. We have 4th of July festivals. We have museum exhibitions planned. Are you asking us to plan new events? And the answer is yes, and. We also are encouraging you to co-brand your existing events. We know that these incredible things happen around the state already, and we also understand that there are budgetary and staffing limitations for the ability for all communities to create new programs. However, if there is a new program that you've always wanted to do, this may be the moment in which you can do that. So when we're talking about our statewide events calendar, I'm actually working with Colorado OIT to make the process more seamless so that you can simply upload your events and then they will be available on a searchable map. Colorado Tourism Office is specifically interested in this. Tim Wolf is the director of CTO. He is one of our new co-chairs for this year. And he is not only thinking about the ways that we can advertise this across the state, but the ways that communities across the nation can be aware of this. We're already talking about some media events in which 250, 150 is going to be deeply highlighted to national and international media coming up this spring. So with that, we really do encourage you to share with us the things that you do so that we can help broadcast and amplify that out for you. In addition to that, and this is the question that comes up quite often, do we have funding available? And I wish that we were here next Wednesday because I would be able to announce it. But coming up this Tuesday, we have a press release being announced regarding some of our aligned giving programs that we are partnering up with Colorado foundations to ensure that communities across the state can be eligible for some of those grant opportunities. And next slide, please. We also do hear about community programs and events that are happening across the state, including capital projects. So I've had conversations out of Castle Rock. I recently had a conversation with a representative from Salida, and they have mentioned the building of new rec centers, new community centers, and have asked, you know, should I or could I be thinking about putting a plaque to mark this as a moment in time in which we provided to the people in our community? And the answer is certainly yes. Commissioners would love to see things like that. So we know that in 1976, there were a number of community investments that were made. I'm sure you have all seen them. You know, when you walk around some ball fields, they have signs indicating that that happened around the centennial bicentennial. So truly, I am here to let you know that this is on the radar. Commissioners are thinking about it. We are encouraging folks to get involved and truly to invite your communities to consider how you might be willing to or interested in participating in this. I should mention really quickly that we will have a toolkit that will launch the same day that we make our fundraising our funding announcement. So next Tuesday on our website, there will be a toolkit that will simply be a one-stop shop of how to. It will answer all of these questions. It lists who our commissioners are and gives details on all of the things that you might need to know about this. It also does give you access to a whole load of digital assets that our PR team is currently working on compiling. So thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here and happy to answer whatever questions you have.
Thank you, Katie. I appreciate it. Does anyone have any questions? I'm curious, Katie, as we ask, because I did actually send you an email last night asking for a speaker. If we ask for speakers, do we go to our local rep, which would be John Southers, or do we send them through your office?
If you could send them to me, that would be great. As much as I can, I'm arranging opportunities for commissioners to actually come and speak, so I will look for that email.
Okay. And can you say it's sesquicentennial and there's another centennial? Can you say the long word?
I can, yes. So sesquicentennial means 150. Semi-quincentennial essentially means half of 500, so 250. And we have put that together, and we fondly call this the sesquisemi-quincentennial. If you're feeling cheeky, you can call it the sesquisemi-quin. That's how we've shortened it. But it's a word we have made up. We've actually seen it gain quite a lot of traction, and I find it to be a great icebreaker for communities.
Okay, there we go. I noticed that word. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Were there any questions online at all? Okay, we're looking forward to working with you. And if we have a copy of that presentation, Andy, if you could send it out to the board. Okay, thank you very much, Katie. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Okay. Now, as part of chairman's privilege, I'm actually going to take Hannah Parsons, our Colorado Department of Transportation Commissioner, out of order because I know how busy of a schedule she has. So let's go ahead, and Hannah should be available to give a report.
I am. Thank you, Chair Williams. I really appreciate this. Yeah, I don't have a huge report to give, but I would say I think the things that we have to discuss are important. We've had a lot of feedback, as you can imagine, about the budget for CDOT this session. And here's what I'm hearing so far. Everything is still in flux. As you know, the state of Colorado has a big budget problem. One of the things I think that most people would find most concerning, as do I, is that if you recall, when Senate Bill 21-260 passed a few years ago, there was a commitment of $100 million from the general fund to the state highway fund for 5 years. And as in an effort to balance the budget, those dollars are being clawed back for 2025. We don't know yet how much. There's been an ongoing discussion between Executive Director Lou and the whole team at CDOT. I will give credit to the executive team at CDOT. They're working hard on trying to preserve as much as they can. But the Joint Budget Committee we've heard anything from 30 plus million, 60 plus million to the full 100 million being cut. So I'm not totally sure where that stands at the moment. We get updates every Friday. So that's one that we're watching because, there's okay, if we take it down to 60 million-ish in 2025, what does that mean for the following years? We'll try to get it back. But as you can imagine, the fear is if we lose it now, it'll always be tapped for other budget balancing efforts. We had a lot of feedback at and I really appreciated some locals that were speaking at the commission and public comment last month. So thank you to people who did that. And I in my comments responded that please take those same comments to the Joint Budget Committee and the state legislature. We don't have a lot of representation up there. So that's where I think a lot of our activities could really benefit. So if people have those relationships with members of the Joint Budget Committee, a reminder of this funding being important for our roads is really, really critical. I think there's a misunderstanding about what funds can be moved to what buckets. So we have several enterprises at the state level, as you all know, and a lot of those enterprise dollars are very specific in what they can be used for. So it's not like we can take money out of an enterprise used for one thing and apply it to maintenance and operations of our highways. So I think there's a misunderstanding a little bit about how we can move dollars. So that's a really important thing for people to understand. Second, and this will probably come up in the legislative review, is we're just watching some amendments on a transit bill that right now is, I think, going to be heard in committee today with some amendments that I don't think will directly impact. I mean, it will impact all of the MPOs and local municipalities, not maybe as negatively as it originated, but just from a CDOT standpoint, any of these, and CDOT probably will take a position in support if it's amended. But I will say anything that is adding to reporting requirements for CDOT is just going to bog down other processes. So I think as an agency, the staff is still catching up on implementation from previous sessions. So adding additional things that require reporting on pedestrian and transit and how many people are on bikes and all those things could just bog down some of our other processes. That's just Hannah Parsons' opinion on some of these bills. So if we could, I think from PPACG has a current position of opposing that bill, which is probably a good idea from an MPO and local municipality standpoint. So those are my biggest updates, but I'm available if anybody has any questions.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions? I'm going to kind of try to restrict this to the budget so we can get to our military reports because I'm hoping we have Shane or someone here to report from CDOT too. All right. Okay, thanks. Andy Seckline is here. So I see no questions. Hannah, good luck with that. We know it's a tough budget meeting, and I suspect that there's going to be some more gray hairs going on at the state capitol next week. So thank you. And actually, I kind of wanted to start moving Hannah up closer because I know how busy she is, up to the front of the agenda as we can.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, I wanted to recognize we have Council Member Deetra Duncan, and I see also Laura Kronick and Steve King from Monument online as well. So thank you for joining us. Military installation reports. Jeff, we're going to go with you first because you're here, and then we get to hear from the Air Force Academy and Fort Carson.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to the board. Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to the Board of Directors. I have two items to brief. The first is next week we're hosting Congressman or Representative Jeff Crank and several other legislative members. They will be getting an orientation of Peterson, Schriever, Cheyenne Mountain, and the military space operations that we're providing, as well as the infrastructure issues. We're hoping that this initial introduction is his first educational opportunity to understand what the benefits and the importance of our space missions here in the Pikes Peak region are. Second item is Space Base Delta One will be changing its organizational structure this spring. Schriever, Peterson, and Cheyenne Mountain will split back into their former installation structure, and Schriever Space Force Base will be designated as Space Base 41. Peterson Space Force Base and Cheyenne Mountain will retain their designation as Space Base Delta 2, or excuse me, Space Base Delta 1. What this means is that there's going to be an installation commander and a command staff dedicated to Schriever Space Force Base, and they'll report directly to Space Operations Command. While the details are being worked through, we do know that the Space Operations Command and the U.S. Space Force Initiative will reach initial operation capability this summer, and we are planning to have full operation capability by the end of summer 2026. A lot of this, what this means for our area governments is space operations will still continue. Our people will still be supporting national defense, but with the separation, there will be two entities that will essentially be part of our community as opposed to us being one 3 installation family. Pending any questions, that's all I have to report.
Okay, are there any questions? All right, we're going to go to, is Colonel Dan Werner from the Air Force Academy online?
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Just a few updates from the Air Force Academy. Last week, we ended up executing a major culminating exercise on the Academy, what used to be recognition, which was really kind of focused on our freshman class at the Academy and just kind of putting them through a very stressful environment. We've retooled this into becoming involving all 4 classes and really kind of getting the seniors kind of leading the overall effort, juniors being team leader, or I'm sorry, kind of unit leaders, and then sophomores being direct supervisors of the freshmen. This took place across the entire grounds of the Air Force Academy, all the way into our training area of Jacks Valley. And despite the massive high winds that we ended up having right at the beginning, which took a few of our tents down, it was a rousing success of getting the entire cadet population really to become war fighters, to win, and engaged in our national defense. So huge lift by by the Academy. Also, thanks to our partners down at Space Base Delta One who helped set up some tents and some of the other infrastructure that was necessary for the exercise. So Jeff, appreciate that. The other major thing that's coming up on the horizon is May 29th will be graduation for the class of 2025 here at the Air Force Academy. Still do not know who the keynote speaker is going to be for graduation, but the event will still go as planned on May 29th. So as usual, we get our annual Thunderbird show here for Colorado Springs and surrounding communities. So be looking up to the sky, and if you can get a chance to come out and see some of the future second lieutenants in the Air Force and Space Force and congratulate them, all are welcome to come out for that. Pending any questions, that's all we have. And Jeff, as you stand up that command at Schriever Space Force Base, if you need me there next summer, just put my name in the hat. Any chance to stick around Colorado, I'm happy to do so.
We love to keep you in Colorado. So thank you very much for that report. And now we are very excited to have David Tukmanian from Fort Carson. Thank you, David, for coming.
Hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having us. So just a couple updates from Fort Carson. Excuse me. You gotta forgive me. I have a 10-year-old hockey player, which means that I don't have a voice anymore. So couple updates from Fort Carson. So specifically in the arena of intergovernmental support agreements, we have a robust catalog of 5 such agreements, 3 with Fountain, 1 with Colorado Springs Utilities, and 1 with Douglas County. But we're looking to expand that portfolio specifically in 4 arenas: data analytics, transit, some environmental services, and some dust mitigation work down at Pinyon Canyon. And last week, or excuse me, 2 weeks ago, we met with many of our partners, many of whom are sitting in this meeting. So I'd like to thank all those folks that we met with, looking at expanding those formal intergovernmental support agreements. The next thing I'd like to talk about is Fort Carson 2042. So we just heard about the 150th anniversary of Colorado. However, Fort Carson's coming up on our 100th anniversary, and in 2042, so a few years down the road. And we've begun planning, preparing our strategic plan for that. We included some folks from Fountain and some folks from Colorado Springs and their planning departments as we start to shape what we think Fort Carson and the surrounding community should look like and should provide to all of our folks at that 100-year mark. And so I appreciate the participation of all those folks. And as we develop these plans, I think we're going to expand that invited population to more of our planners in the surrounding community. So that's it from Fort Carson. Appreciate the time.
Thank you very much. My dad went through Camp Carson, but he's no longer alive to help you with the 100-year anniversary. So, which is okay. He was 92 when he passed. Thank you very much. We appreciate all that you do. Okay. I don't think we have anyone from the Marines or the Navy, but I want to recommend, we need to recognize all of our divisions of the military. Item number 4. Oh, and the Coast Guard. I just don't know their song. That's the problem. I'll have to work on that one. Consent items. These items will be acted on as a whole unless they are called up for a discussion by a board member or citizen wishing to address the board. So if everybody's had a chance to review the consent items, I will take a motion to approve them.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar as presented. John Graham.
Second, Eric Stone.
Okay. If there's no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Action items number 5, legislative update with Jared Werner, Public Policy and Communications Manager.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, Jared Werner. We also have Ed Bowditch on the line from Denver to answer any questions. But I've already pulled up, legislative committee has been meeting every other week, including this past Monday. And they have opted to take positions on the following bills on the screen right now. I do want to highlight one, and Ed, feel free to jump in if there's anything else that has changed. You all should have received an email late Monday with the amendments to Senate Bill 30, which is the mode choice reduction, increase transportation mode choice, reduce emissions. I'm going to ignore that the tense is off on that, on the bill title. But what that bill does, and you heard Commissioner Parsons mention this as well, some other changes, requirements on MPOs. The previous bill had some other requirements on municipalities that have been significantly lessened. There is still one requirement on municipalities in the amended text. But Senate Bill 30 does also put additional requirements on MPOs specifically. I summarized for you at least our initial concerns or our initial thoughts on the bill. And while we are probably in a better shape than we would have been this time last year, just because we did adopt the active transportation plan last fall, we did adopt the regional transit plan last month, which is what a lot of this bill is focused on. So we're fortunate that there are some definitions in the bill text that does have concerns for us, specifically in identifying gaps. What is a gap? And so depending what that definition is, we may already meet the requirements of the bill, which is fantastic and great. This also would require us to do these plans as part of our 5-year cycle. The regional transit plan is already part of that 5-year cycle for us, and so that would not be an additional requirement. The active transportation plan, though, would be a requirement, which it is not right now. Previously, that was, I want to say, about 10 or 15 years ago, which was when the last active transportation plan was done. And so we just updated it just as we needed to. But a lot of the definitions in this bill just have a lot of questions for us on whether that plan would meet the requirements. Just for awareness, that active transportation plan for us costs us about $150,000 between staff time and consultants. And so if that's now an every 5-year line item for us, I mean, we were planning to do this on a 5-year cycle, but we weren't mandated or required to. So just awareness in terms of how that works. And then on Senate Bill 30 specifically, there was a fiscal note released on the pre-amended version. So the original version, CDOT was planning to take that money out of the state highway fund, so that would not have a general fund impact. So if we assume that that's probably going to be how they plan to fund this with this new version, you know, I think we're all fairly well attuned that anything with a fiscal note of any kind is having a hard time getting through the legislature. This would have a fiscal note, but it would not be attached to the general fund. So the chances of it going, or at least getting stopped for that reason, go down. I'm going to turn it over to Ed a little bit, see if how much I got right or how much I got wrong.
Ed,
Thank
are
you,
you available?
Jared.
Thank you.
I am here, and I think Jennifer may be in the waiting room, so you can let her in as well. But thank you. Today is day 64 of the legislative session. We passed halftime on Saturday and keep on plugging away. The next 2 weeks are going to be critical for the overall state budget. Just about all of the tough decisions are going to need to be made in terms of how to balance the budget with the $1.2 billion shortfall. So we'll wait to see on that issue. On mode choice, I wanted to let you know, Jennifer and I just talked to the lobbyist who's representing the organization that is pushing the agenda, pushing the bill. And she did ask me a few minutes ago, what would it take us to get away from our opposed position? And I texted Jared probably right before he went to the microphone, and he said, that definition of gap is key. So we want to keep working on that. Other than that, the bills that you see there, I think a lot of them are pretty self-explanatory. One of the things that is, I can update you on Senate Bill 79, the Vending of Digital Assets Act. This gets into cryptocurrency fraud and trying to put some limits on what people can invest in if they are new users to crypto ATMs. These are ATMs that are popping up in convenience stores and grocery stores. They look like regular ATMs, but they're crypto ATMs. That bill passed the Senate with very strong majorities and is going to be up in its first House committee on Monday. So I think that one has bipartisan sponsorship and a lot of support. One of the other bills on the list, 1286, the Protecting Workers from Extreme Temperatures. This bill is being fought by lots of business organizations. It was on the calendar for tomorrow, but it has been pulled off the calendar, which sends a message to me that they don't have the votes to move it out of committee. So we will keep watching that one as well. Happy to answer any other questions, and Jennifer's going to try and rejoin again. She has to be let in on the link.
Okay. Are there any questions on any of these bills and the positions that the legislative committee has taken on the bills? Just a reminder, our legislative committee meets most Monday mornings at 8:30, and we have a pretty healthy discussion about a lot of these. So, okay, I don't think we have any questions, Ed. And so with all of that, I would take. Oh, I'm sorry, William Shaw. Go ahead, you have a question.
Yeah, hi, William Shaw from the town of Rama. On Senate Bill 003 on new gun restrictions, where's that standing and where do you think that's going to end up?
So I'll just jump in. That's the major gun bill that went through the Senate. I think it just went through the first hearing in the House last night. I wasn't tracking it. That is a public safety. That is a gun rights bill. That is just nowhere in our wheelhouse. And so, happy. It's just one of those things that we just don't get into that topic area.
Yeah. So William,
I will say, yeah, that did pass the committee last night in the House, and it has passed the Senate. So it seems to be moving right along, but it's not something I've been tracking for Pikes Peak.
okay. Thank you. All right. Did that answer your question, William? It's not in our wheelhouse, but that gives us an answer at least as to what's going on with it.
Yeah, it's some information. It's one of those things that I strongly disagree with, and I'm with Sheriff Roybal on that one. I was just curious if there was any more updates since it was going up for another vote last night. I haven't heard anything yet. So thank you for answering.
Thank you very much. Okay, I will entertain oh, go ahead. Mayor Thompson.
Yeah, I have a bill that is not on our list, but I want to make sure everybody's aware of it, and we may want to consider adding it to our list. House Bill 25-1277. It's called Increasing Transparency Impact of Fuel Products. This is a bill that will add to your cost of purchasing gasoline. I just texted it to Andy and I'm switching between phones here. Have a quick, just a second here, sorry. It says, according to the proposal, up to a $20,000 fine will hang over the heads of every retailer who sells either liquid or gas fuels if they don't have global warming stickers on their pumps. And they're very specific on the size of the stickers and that they have to be on at all times. And on it goes. So anyways, I think that's one we might want to add to our costs because it definitely is going to add to the cost of things in the transportation world. And that's just not liquid or gas fuels can be other things besides just the gasoline you put in your car, kerosene, things like that.
Yes, I think we should consider that one in the legislative committee. So, are there any other questions? I see William still has his hand up, but I just don't know if that's okay.
Oh, sorry, that didn't get taken off. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I have a hard time finding the hand thing too on Microsoft Teams. So, okay, I will take a motion to approve the legislative report and support the positions that the legislative committee has taken.
So moved. Case.
Second, Thompson.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. And are we going to just keep an eye on this? Oh no, we're currently opposing Senate Bill 30, so we're good on that. Okay, thank you very much, Jared, for all your hard work. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. And I before we jump to the next item, I'm going to pass over to Andy for a federal discussion.
Okay. Andy,
Yes,
we're ready for our
thank-
federal discussion. This is going to be fun.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this will be fairly brief. Carol and I are going to tag team on this a little bit, but we had a good request last week to report out on what we're tracking as far as federal actions and impacts that those may be having on our grants and programs and services that we provide. So if we can pull up the slides for this, probably the most important thing I want to emphasize right now, based on what we're seeing at the moment, we're not seeing any specific impacts to us and our funding as far as anything being frozen or reduced. Okay, so just wanted to make sure that that's clear. I'm going to cover the first couple of slides, and then Carol's going to walk you through the federal grants and contracts that we do have in place that we're tracking. Probably the most relevant executive order at the moment that's really kind of impacting us to really take a look at our programs and our grants is one that was issued February 26th, and the title of that is on the screen here. And basically, this is a review that's going to be conducted over the next 30 days to basically look at all federal grants, all federal contracts for potential cost reductions for efficiency and to advance the policies of the administration. To kind of highlighted the key section here, there's a couple of key sections I want to bring up, but this is the first one where there's a review of all existing covered contracts and grants, and where appropriate and consistent with applicable law, possibly terminate or modify those contracts or grants. So that was a little bit of a red flag. We kind of assumed in the past that, a signed contract, a signed grant agreement would give us cover and we would be good there. But the fact that existing grants and contracts, including ones that we have, would be under review, raises a little bit of a red flag. Not overly concerned yet, but just wanted to point that out. Next slide. And the two other sections I was going to highlight that are part of that executive order as well. And this is probably the most relevant section, is that after this review, they're going to issue guidance on signing new contracts. So moving forward, that's where we expect that's going to be the most insightful as far as informing what our work may look like with some of our grants, some of our contracts in the future. And then the third section is going to highlight here is that there's apparently within each federal department, federal agency, there's a centralized database that's being assembled with the intent to record every payment that's issued by the agency under each contract and grant, along with, and this is really kind of the kicker, the thing that is a little bit of a red flag, but along with a brief written justification for each payment that's made. Again, if we've got a signed contract, a signed grant, and we're working within the parameters of those grants and contracts, we also are required to submit a lot of backup with every reimbursement request that we submit to the feds. Kind of raises a concern, why would there be additional written justification by somebody back in DC before they sign off on our reimbursement request? So that's just one thing that kind of popped out in this review as well. So that's the context and sort of the backdrop for our review of our contract. So with that, I'm going to ask Carol to kind of walk you through the existing federal grants that we have.
Yeah, good morning. Carol McBroom, PPACG Finance Director. I felt like it was important to look back at 2024 before we look at 2025. So I just wanted to remind you that we ended our fiscal year with revenue of $11.8 million. Of that revenue, 65% is federal funded. Our largest program is the AAA, with 61% of our budget, followed by the transportation program and the mobility program. I'll leave this up there for a second for you to review, but we'll move on to 2025. Yeah. Okay. So let's get into 2025. So what this is a lot of data. And in the slides that I will show you next, I break down the data for more detail, and it's easier to understand. But what this is all of our existing grants. The top 3 quarters is all federal funding, and the bottom quarter is local and state funding. So currently we have $8.2 million worth of contracts, of which 7 million is federal funding, which is 2.5 million would be the other state. I break it out by the agency, how we receive funding, the grant type, whether it is federally reauthorized, the grant title. I felt like it was important for you to know when the actual current contract expires. So there's a column there. And then the remaining 2025 balance. And again, it's a lot of data, and I'll break it down as slides go on. But I also want to point out that we make a pretty big impact on our community and our region. And I'd like to highlight a couple. And the first one being the top line, the 2.26 million from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. That's for our AAA program. And of that 2.6 billion, we will pass through to our providers 1.4 million of those funds remaining. That is 64%. And our service providers improve the quality of lives of our older adults in the communities, and they provide such services as assisted transportation, meals, case management, and caregiver support. In addition, I'd like to point out the $688,000 remaining in the 5310 FTA funding with the U.S. Department of Transportation. It's crucial for senior transportation, and 90% of those funds are passed through to our providers, which again ensures seniors can access transportation. Okay, so I'll dig deeper in the next slide into some information. So what this is only federal funding. So I broke it out again, all the same data that I had before. But what I want to talk to you about on this slide is the difference between formula funding and discretionary grants. And formula funding is authorized by Congress. It's allocated based on a predetermined formula like population size or other measurable criteria. And it's considered more stable funding as it is normally granted for 5 years. Discretionary grants are the grants that we go after, that we apply for, and the grant application is competitive, and the awards are based on the application or proposal. Again, we have $5.7 million worth of federal funding right now. And the next slide. It's same information. Just wanted to break it out a little differently so that you understand. We have 3 major grants that are formula funded. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services with the AAA, that funds through the state. We have 2 Department of Transportations. One is the Transportation Planning Program that flows through the state. But the 5310, the FTA funding, is actually direct funding. And then I make note that the transportation funding is federally reauthorized, and that authorization goes through 2026. Currently, the AAA grant, the 2.257 million, is not yet reauthorized, but it's currently under a continuing resolution. So the formula funding, I've listed it out, and then you can see discretionary funding is on the right-hand side.
Yeah, I have a question. So when it says it flows through the state, does that mean it just goes to the state and comes to us? Or does that mean the state budget committee, the joint budget committee, gets to consider it?
I would think both. It does flow through the state to us.
Yeah, I don't know as if it's sort of earmarked in the budget process.
It's a very good question. Kind of varies, affects mostly transportation and the AAA. So our contract would be with the state, with CDOT for our transportation, what's called Consolidated Planning Grant Funds. Don't know that those are affected by the JBC review process and the state budget. I think that's a little more protected. A little more maybe concern on our contract we have with CDHS, the Colorado Department of Human Services. I know our federal fund, our contract again is with that state agency, including for those federal funds. I don't know how locked in, if you will, those funds are. Jody might be able to address this. If the JBC is looking at a cut, as they are, to our AAA funding, that's my understanding is both state and potentially federal.
Our understanding is the state, the federal funds effectively work as a pass through the state. They're passed through and administered by the State Unit on Aging within CDHS to the AAAs across the state of Colorado. The JBC only has authority to manage the state budget line. So that state fund for senior services is the budget line. So when they may look at the federal funding, but they cannot adjust the federal funding. It is a pass-through directed from the Administration on Community Living out of Health and Human Services at the federal level.
But if they want to make cuts in the state portion, they can.
Yes.
Which they may have.
JBC
Okay.
can do that, yes.
Yeah, that's the one I'm most worried about is the Area Agency on Aging at the moment. That
Thank
doesn't
you.
mean
Me
I'm not
too.
worried about transportation, but
Okay, and final slide. I thought again, a question, sorry.
oh, we have another question. Go ahead, Commissioner Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question. You mentioned that 65% of the funds pass through to service providers. Can you tell us what happens to the other 35%?
Jody, do you want to take, it's internal programs? I'll let Jody handle this question.
Good morning. Yes, that is our internal services as well as administration of the overall grant. So we have we manage the Ombudsman program here. We have the Family Caregiver Support Center here. We have our administrative team that manage the grants. We have all of our and then we also manage the SHIP program, the State Health Insurance Program, which is part of the discretionary funding that comes through Denver out of the Division of Insurance.
Right.
And we serve actually 9 counties with those funds, not just the 3.
All right. Thank you, Jody. Just wanted to make sure that that none of it went to the state like other federal grants that come through and are administered, and they take their matching portion before it ever sees hands in this region. So thank you.
So there is a match portion taken from the state portion before it does come to us. But of the portion, the calculations that Carol is sharing today, that is what comes into the Area Agency on Aging and PPACG specifically, and through an RFP process, working with providers across all 3 counties. That's how those funds are distributed. And to her calculations, about 2/3 of that goes out. About 1/3 is retained. Some of that is retained specifically because it is directed administration funding and cannot be used for direct services. The rest we pull into services just like our providers do.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If I could just add one more comment too, and you didn't ask this, but if we do take a hit, which we do anticipate state funding for AAA services, we're taking a hit as well internally with our internal work.
Yes, we're the same criteria and expectations that we've asked our providers to be looking at in the current environment. We're taking a look at ourselves.
Go ahead. Do we have anything?
Okay.
Another slide or what
Yeah,
else?
One more slide. Last slide. I thought it was important to look at the current contracts expiration dates. Again, like Andy said, we have no reason to believe that the contracts that we have in place won't continue. But for this presentation, we're not assuming anything. And so the expiration date, there's 2. So I gave you 2 charts. The bottom chart I'm not going to deal with today. That's all funding. I was just going to focus on the top chart, and that's federal funding only. So as you can see, the end of second quarter, June 2025, we have $2.4 million worth of Fed funds that will be expiring. And in third quarter 2025, we have $2.8 million worth of Fed funds. Any questions?
And just a couple of kind of wrap up observations for the group. A few things that I would say that we're a little more concerned about than others. A couple of things that are sort of on our radar. We're still seeking direction on our regional grant navigator program that's funded by the state, not funded by the feds. But the intent of that program, which is in place statewide with state funding, is that our grant navigators are helping our jurisdictions go after federal grants in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. We're kind of in a waiting period, quite honestly, because we know that some of those grants are going to get repurposed at the federal level. So we simply don't know at this point if our grant navigator is going to be on board throughout the duration of the year. So more to come on that, but that's one area that I'm frankly concerned about. Kind of somewhat related to that, if you have existing grants out there, I would suggest that you get those wrapped up with our federal partners quickly, sooner rather than later. I know Park County got a big Protect grant a couple of months ago. Hopefully you've got that signed and solidified. We've got a number of grants here. We've got our safety grant, Safe Streets for All, that actually the City of Woodland Park secured for us on behalf of the region. That's under the same 30-day review. So a little bit of concern about that. We just haven't gotten further direction on that. We have heard that carbon reduction funds that we make available through our TIP, there's been a target on that. We don't know the direction that that's going to take at this point. Don't want to suggest that that's going away, but that we keep reading about dispatches coming from DC that there's a little bit of a target on our carbon reduction funds. I think it's roughly $1 million we distribute, or maybe it's less than that. That goes out to our local jurisdictions for multimodal projects. Loosely related, but this doesn't tie in directly to the executive order that we were talking about. But we know that our Federal Highway Administration staff that are helping us with grants and helps us with our programs lost 13 staff members, early retirement, and loss of staff through folks that were on probationary status. So 13 out of total of 26 in their organization. So by my math, that's about half. So we're concerned about that, the impact that it's going to have on some program development and project delivery. Back on the Older Americans Act and senior funding, just real briefly, Carol alluded to this, that it's federally, it's part of the continuing resolution that expires at midnight on Friday. So we're hoping, fingers crossed, that if it's going to continue for the next 6 months, which is kind of the likelihood at this point, it's at the same funding level 2024 roughly. So hopefully we don't see a hit in those funds, at least for the next 6 months. We are concerned on the state level, as we've discussed, that we're going to lose, pretty much sure that we're going to lose some additional funding that was put into our senior services to the tune of $2 million that we fought hard for this past state fiscal year to be put in the budget. That's probably coming out in the latest JBC conversation. So we know at some point, some form or fashion, we're going to take a hit on our senior services. One other thing I'll mention, a little bit of a tangent, but there's been a lot of discussion at the federal level about Medicaid potentially taking a hit. Doesn't impact us directly, but I will say that if there is a reduction in Medicaid service that some of our local residents rely on, our senior residents would rely on, that if there's a cut there, that's going to impact our senior service delivery, either indirectly or directly. We've had conversations with Silver Key and Vita and others, and they're kind of bracing for potentially what an impact there might feel like as well. So a lot of moving parts around the senior funding arena, but just wanted to mention that. Mention that, with the continuing resolution most likely going through September 30th, for some of our discretionary grants, we're going to use that as a kind of a target to wrap up substantially the work that we're operating under with some of these discretionary funded programs. Paul's going to give a briefing here in a few minutes on our military installation planning work. That's a contract that we have in place with DoD through the end of this calendar year, through December 31st. But for financial purposes, we're going to try to get the bulk of that work done by September 30th, not knowing what's going to happen from October 1st moving forward. But would also mention that that's, I think, a little bit of an opportunity. If there's a continuing resolution in place through September 30th, that gives us 6 months to maybe strategize on doing some targeted federal advocacy with the right folks to remind them why it's so important that they fund our senior services and fund other things we're working on in the military planning community, transportation funds, obviously. So more to come on that. Once the dust settles with the federal budget, I think we'll probably schedule a conversation on what kind of advocacy we should do as an organization, especially with members in the House that are in the majority party that could really help us. Final thing I'll mention is that we're taking all of this to heart. We've gotten some guidance from the state to make sure that if we have grants in place and contracts in place with our federal partners, that we make sure that we're only incurring those expenses that are necessary to the continuing operation of our program. We're reviewing everything through that lens. Carol and I are, and the management team. Not that we have extraneous things, but I mean, having to pare back on things like travel and training and equipment occasionally, things like that are just not going to be moving forward in the time being. So we're being judicious with the grants that we do have in place, just knowing that everything's obviously under a microscope, and we'll know more as the review that's taking place now is finished up. So With that, we'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Okay, do we have any other questions? I would say if only I could lose weight as fast as Doge is cutting our government. I could be quite happy about that. So thank you very much. We'll keep a close eye on it all throughout the year. I know I picked up something from the National Association of Counties on fully funding the Older Americans Act. The National Association of Counties has not quite adjusted their literature to ask just maintain funding. So I would recommend as you see your federal officials, your congressmen or your senators, that you say, we really would like you to continue to maintain the level we are at. I don't think we can hope to get a fully funded Older Americans Act. So I think that, as you get a chance, if you see some of your elected representatives, let's take a chance to say, we're worried about our aging population. These are very important services for them. So, but we'll get through it. Thank you very much. Okay, information items. Paul Rochette, Military Installation Resilience Review Update.
Hey, Paul. It's my pleasure to come up and give you a brief overview of what we're doing with the military installation planning program. And I'm going to try and keep it fairly short. Now, before I get started, I do want to say that we have our program manager from the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation online. And I don't know if Alec would like to say just a good morning or anything, but Old CC is the abbreviation of the organization. They report to the Office of the Secretary of Defense. And so I thought I'd just give a quick history of what we're doing. But Alec, would you like to say good morning or?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invite. Look
So
forward
Alec,
to your
Alec is
presentation.
online in case you have any questions about the program. And I kind of warned them that there might be one or two. So anyway, I'd like to do a very brief history since we do have new members here on the board. Our program with Old CC has been ongoing since about 2015. We had an initial grant from 2015 to 2018 that really worked with all of the installations to look at all of the possible issues or problems or opportunities. And we came up with 111 different opportunities and issues. The second grant was 2019 to 2021, and they selected 3 or 4 to really focus on. And one was emergency mapping, some sub-area plans for Peterson, sub-area plan for USAFA, some real estate disclosure land. They worked with the city on the retool COS. And one of the big significant outcomes is recognition of the Air Force Academy Airfield with an airport overlay zone, which gives regulation about flying over that. Then we came up with the third joint land use study, 2021 through 2024. That's when I came on board. And we had 4 major tasks. One was we had funding to provide through the city of Colorado Springs to do the design work on a new entrance to a redesign of the entrance into Peterson Space Force Base. On the civilian side, we really had kind of a large charge or a generalized charge to work on military, civilian, and wildfire mitigation, collaboration and coordination, which was the title. I'll get into what we did under that in the next couple slides. Stormwater collaboration, we had a lot of stormwater issues, really focusing on Air Force Academy, and then a Schriever Energy Resiliency Study. That brings us to our current grant, which started in July of last summer. It goes to the end of the year here, and we really have 2 really major tasks. One is to continue our wildfire mitigation collaboration and stormwater collaboration, and the other is to do 2 elements to it, a tabletop exercise and a critical infrastructure risk analysis. Working with all of the installations, we've really kind of focused down into what will be most beneficial with the dollars that we have. We're going to be focusing our efforts really around Air Force Academy, but inviting the other installations to participate, especially as we do the tabletop exercise. Next slide, please. Okay, so I put this one in here. What is the mission of our program? It's to preserve and protect the public health, safety, and general welfare for those living near an active military installation. That's the civilian side. protect and preserve the military readiness and defense capabilities, and enhance civilian and military communication and collaboration. And that's really our primary function, is that collaboration and communication between the civilians and the military. Expected outcomes, it's really to really make the installations more resilient, just to paraphrase this. And our objective is to help guide future discussions on need and location of wildfire and post fire flood mitigation and preparation. That's really the objective of the task that we have at hand right now. Next slide, please. Okay, some of our past accomplishments, we've got a pretty good list. Airport master plan, the design study for Peterson Interchange. We did lead an application to the Air Force Civilian Engineering Center for what's called a REPI Challenge Award. We received $424,000 to do mitigation on Cheyenne Mountain State Park for the protection of Cheyenne Mountain Space Force Station. We've kind of collaborated and brought together another application for $3 million under the REPI Challenge program. We've been, the award is pending at this point. We've received notice that it's been approved, but it can't be released yet because a lot of different things. But anyhow, that will do about 1,200 acres of wildfire mitigation, 800 along the western boundary of Air Force Academy on U.S. Forest Service land, and another 400 acres down around Cheyenne Mountain Cheyenne Mountain Space Force Station on Old Stage Road. We received a grant from the state to prepare 3 community wildfire protection plans for Monument Valley, for Monument, and for Highway 115. We got a grant to do a study on a pre-design study for some stormwater damages on Jackson Creek as it leads into Monument Creek. That study was completed 2 days ago, and got that one done. We prepared a grant for a state furworm fire, let's see, forest restoration and wildfire resiliency management, I think. Anyhow, that was for a project along 115. We did not get it submitted for some logistical purposes. And we also hosted and funded a community wildfire preparation meeting for Woodman Valley and the Peregrine neighborhoods regarding access to USAFA in case of a fire. We did that last year. It was a very successful effort. Next slide, please. Okay, remaining tasks for this year, what we've got to do, and we're going to try and get almost all of this done other than the administrative stuff by the end of September. The tabletop exercise for emergency response to a hypothetical large multi-jurisdictional fire. We're going to issue an RFP to conduct this exercise, but the idea will be not how do you marshal the firefighters to attack the fire. That's well established between all the fire agencies. But how do you do the communication among agencies? Who's in command if it's multi-jurisdictional? How do you communicate with each other? How do you communicate with the community? And this exercise will be of benefit to all the installations, even though it may be focused around Air Force Academy. We've got several areas that might be a potential exercise focus. The second one, we're looking at the critical risk analysis. We've been pulling together a large number of maps from a variety of sources, looking at wildfire risk, probability, so on and so forth. And then after a major fire we saw with Waldo Canyon, a very great risk of post-fire stormwater flooding. So we're going to be looking at doing a very specific consultant-led exercise to really identify the risk, where the fires may start, how they may progress, what the implications are to USAFA in terms of their mission assuredness, and then after that, what are the possibilities and risk and mitigation efforts for a post-fire flood? It's a very, been working very strongly with both community and Air Force Academy folks. So this will be getting going. I've got to run it by a strategic leadership group here in the next 2 weeks, and then we're going to issue an RFP and get it rolling. We're looking at potentially doing a grant application to the state for another furworm program to do wildfire mitigation in association with military installations. And we're also working with the possibility of participating in applying for a REPI application to fund additional wildfire or post-fire flood mitigation. That is in conjunction with another effort that's going on in the region led by the Palmer Land Trust to go after what's called a Sentinel Landscape Designation, which is an agreement between Department of Ag, Department of Interior, FEMA, and the Department of Defense. With this designation, you score much higher points when you go after grant applications to any of them. So this is a regional effort to come together to enhance our abilities to mitigate against fire, post-fire floods, and other natural disasters. Next slide, please. Okay. The participants in all of this, it's a very large group of people, including U.S. Forest Service, Color State Forest, Pikes Peak Regional Office of Emergency Management, the fire department, Homeland Security, the Cybersecurity Information, the Sheriff's Office, so on and so forth. So it's a very, very large collaborative effort. Map sources, I can skip over that, but Colorado Wildfire Risk Viewer, which is state fire. We've got the Colorado Water Conservation Board to do flood mapping. We're looking at this thing called land tender, which is, I'll show you one slide from that. Next slide, please. Okay, I just wanted to show a couple of illustrative maps and then open it up for questions. So next slide. So this one over here is really fire intensity. This is our primary slide to look at what is the risk of a wildfire and how intense might that fire be. This comes from the state. So next slide, this big area, the big purple area is Air Force Academy up kind of north central to the top. Let's go down to the next slide. This zoomed in a little bit more. When you look at the wildfire potential, that really dark red, that's a very high potential. That's the boundary of Air Force Academy and on Air Force Academy. So this is a very, very significant risk that we want to address. Next slide, please. This is burn probability. How likely are we to have a fire? And as you can see, we are extremely high likelihood of having a fire in the next 10 years along the boundary of Air Force Academy, as well as the Broadmoor all the way down to the Cheyenne Mountain State Park area. Next slide, please. This is the model from the land tender. We could look at all these different kinds of mitigation. There's mechanical, there's hand mitigation, there's controlled burns, there's a lot of different things. Just to give you an idea of the kind of information we have. This area that you see is around Air Force Academy. We get to define the boundaries, whichever one we want to do. Next slide. This one over here, we said, okay, with this land tender model, if we wanted to treat and reduce all the risk of that entire polygon, it's a mere 93,000 acres and only 273 million to do it. Well, we're not going to come up with that. So I was able to go, okay, what if we had 10 million and we wanted to put it into 5 projects? Where do we get the best return on investment? And this mapping system shows us a couple of them around Rampart Reservoir, a couple further up, some near Farish, and then the one up at that northwest corner. We're going to be working with that as part of this modeling effort as we move forward. It also then gives us a return on investment. With your 293 million, you get a 100% reduction in risk or available risk. This gives us a much higher proportion of benefit per dollar. So it's the best use of the dollars. Next slide, please. This one over here comes from the Colorado Water Conservation Board. This is our first stab at looking at what are the post-fire flood risk. As we all saw with Waldo Canyon, we know that's very significant. This is a sub-basin area map. The lines that you see, that black triangle in the center is Air Force Academy. That shows that there are 2 zones to the north of Academy that flow directly into Monument Creek and then flows through Air Force Academy. And the color shows you the intensity of the post-fire susceptibility to flooding. Very, very severe north of Air Force Academy. And then a couple of sub-basins flow right through Air Force Academy. And if you look down further, the lowest arrow, that's what we got from Waldo Canyon. As you can see, the kinds of things that imply where our greatest risk are. Next slide, please. And this one, we zoomed out. This is our entire El Paso and Teller County Front Range view. As you can see, there's a whole lot of danger area, high flood debris flow probability from Woodland Park south and down Ute Pass, and then along the sub-basin on the west side. Next slide, please. And I think that's it. And it is. So this is really kind of the basis for the consulting effort that we're going to be going out. We've got 75,000. We're looking at various consulting firms that can do hydrology reports and actual forecasting of flood zone maps after a significant fire. So we're going to combine that with the tabletop exercise. One is how do we respond? The other one is how do we anticipate, mitigate, and react afterwards. So, questions?
Well, yeah, I'm going to have one because I represent the Air Force Academy. So I know that we passed a fire mitigation fund at the city of Colorado Springs, but the Air Force Academy is federal land, not city. So I'm curious, is there any, Lynette, you might know how that works. Is there any, I know sometimes they were saying they were going to go outside of the city to do some wildfire mitigation, but I can't imagine there's a lot of money in that fund.
Our utilities actually works more on the mitigation with the federal land with that machine, whatever, I can't remember the name of it.
The big grammar.
The bark strip, yes,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know the city specifically, but I know the utilities has their own department that actually does a lot of mitigation, especially around our utilities infrastructure. And they do work with federal lands on that.
Yeah.
With this very expensive piece of equipment that we're very lucky to have.
The utilities is very involved both in the REPI challenge applications that we've done and in this exercise planning. I've been meeting with Steve Carr and a couple of other utility folks. They will be very integral into this effort. For the city's funding, the 2D effort, they do have some plans to the west of the city. I go to the 2D meetings. They don't have plans to go up further north. Other than maybe, I think, what is that, Fisher's Peak? The one, and I think that's kind of it. But as you go further north, it's all federal lands, and that's not part of the 2D effort. To do this mitigation grant, the REPI grant, we work very closely with the U.S. Forest Service and both the head ranger here, as well as he put other staff on this. And they actually were the ones that submitted the grant to DOD for that wildfire mitigation. What's really cool, just to mention, the REPI Challenge Grant is the only grant that we're aware of, and it's through a thing called the Sykes Act, which allows federal dollars to be matched with federal dollars. And so we were able to use the U.S. Forest Service mitigation dollars budget to make the 50% local match to get the REPI Challenge Grant.
Okay. Looks like we have a question from William Shar.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to start out by thanking you for all your proactive participation in fire mitigation and trying to get this kicked off. I've lived here in Colorado for over 50 years. I'm a Colorado native, true blue, born and raised in El Paso County. Whenever I was a child, my dad had a firewood business, and a lot of the firewood that he would gather for his business would come from the thinning of the woods. We'd go up to Divide and we'd spend all summer up there, or we'd go out to Black Forest and we'd, clear for new roadways and stuff. We did a lot of work down in Cherry Creek. We cleared a lot of that area for the roadways. So I was 8 years old out there with the chainsaw in my hand, and so I do have a lot of experience in all this. A lot of it was preparatory for fire mitigation. Over the years, I noticed that there was a lot of people that didn't understand the thinning of the trees and the dangers that follow up with that, and more regulations got put in place on a state level, and I believe that is what brought on a lot of the major fires that we've had. Maybe if we can, if there's something we can do to help promote public awareness that all these dense woods, sure, they may be pretty and the canopies are great, but it's a fire hazard, and it's not healthy for the trees. They need to be spaced out for them to actually grow and be healthy. And I think a lot of the public is more worried about tire tracks than they are fire mitigation. And I was wondering if there was something that we could do to help promote public awareness to weigh the advantages of, having crews go up there and causing tire tracks. Yes, the ground will heal from that over a season. But whenever you have a devastating fire, we still have big, nasty scars all over Colorado from just, 10 years ago. So my question.
That brings up a suggestion. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I'm good. I was just wondering if there's, some way that we can participate more for public awareness that, tire tracks from crews going up there to thin out the projects, to thin out the woods, is that the ground recovers within a year. But whenever you have a burn scar, we're still suffering from that a decade later. Is there something that we can do to help promote public awareness so we don't have all the protesters, and what we can do to lift some of these regulations that's making it very discouraging? Business owners that still do firewood, and even lumber yards that's closed down, all the regulations, that was their livelihood. They'd go and thin out the trees. It was a win-win for everybody. They made money with the wood products, and we was able to mitigate fire dangers, and regulations put a stop to that. I mean, it's business owners, it's not worth the effort to invest in the equipment to go up there and get the wood, and it's just turned into a lose-lose. What can we do to help reverse that? Lift those regulations and make the public more aware so they're not against the general purpose of fire mitigation.
In terms of public awareness, a great opportunity in our community wildfire protection plans for both Monument and Woodman Valley. We got some money in there to do some demonstration projects and to show residents who are concerned that the place would look terrible if you mitigate. They're very successful demonstration projects, and I'm sure you would all be welcome to visit either of those fire or both of those fire areas to see what a mitigated property looks like. And that's important because we have many homeowners who move to those areas to be in the forest and have an idea that to mitigate is to destroy the value that they came there for. And I think this speaks to that. In terms of regulations, it's really not anything that is in our wheelhouse. However, I agree with you. We really need to understand the whole big picture of wildfire and mitigation versus letting it burn versus prevention, so on and so forth. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Go ahead.
More of a comment, and Paul, you're aware, but I want to make the others aware that the Central Colorado Forest Collaborative is being stood up, and it's really good. So now there's a Pikes Peak region, the Upper South Platte, and then South Park region is the other. There's three in that, and it is an effort to collaborate on these mitigation plans, and obviously working with the REPI and Sentinel landscapes. So that is stood up and moving forward for our area, which is Douglas County to basically Pueblo County. So.
Thank you. And go ahead, Mayor Dixon.
Oh, sorry.
Mayor Graham.
Graham, thank you. Yeah,
Mayor's right there.
I was wondering, do you have a kind of a tentative date for the tabletop exercise, or?
Been talking to Air Force Academy. Their Inspector General's office is looking at doing a tabletop very similar. So we're in discussions of, can we coordinate them? Theirs was a tentatively planned for like September. We need to talk to see if we can do it a little bit sooner. So I'm hoping to get all of this in July, August would be an ideal time. So it is in the middle of fire season, but it's a good time to do it.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Councilmember Crow Iverson.
More of a comment. Can I get a copy of these slides as well? On the 25th, City Council will finalize our ADU policies for Colorado Springs Home Rule. They'll look a little different than states for lots of reasons. Our city is much different than the state, but taking into consideration that we will not allow ADUs in the WUI, and this will be very helpful for that discussion. And just keep that in mind on the 25th, whichever that decision goes, because I think that will definitely impact moving forward, more people to reach out to, more people to get a hold of if they're in ADUs in the way. We did limit it to one ADU per property, but at the same time, that could still be 4,000 to 5,000 to 6,000 ADUs in the city. So we are looking at that, and right now I believe that we won't allow them in the WUI, but we won't know until the 25th.
Right. And if you like, I'd be happy to send you my slides, but I'd also be happy to send you, the website and even show you how to go in there and dig into those slides. So, okay.
Commissioner Weissong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bill Wysong with El Paso County Commissioner District 3, smack dab in the MUI. I would hope that as part of the ADU issue, that you would also look at trying to implement some kind of evacuation planning, because that is also going to be an absolutely critical issue on the west side, not only Colorado Springs, but El Paso County.
Our program, unfortunately, we're constrained by only really working in areas that have military resiliency to it. We can't really expand what we're doing, unfortunately. And I know exactly what you're saying, and I agree, but we have our handcuffs now.
I understand, Paul. This is more towards President Pro Tem Lynette Crow Iverson and the city's issues. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I will wrap this up with the Office of Emergency Management. Frequently will do wildfire drills. And when they do them, if they're coming in, try to use your media outlets to get them announced so individuals can come. I always have the most interesting conversations with the teenagers about, you're home alone after school and a wildfire comes. Are you going to wait for your mom or dad to get out of the house? Or where are you going to meet them? Because we know you can't wait. If you wait, you're going to get stuck because we can't have cars going in while cars are coming out. And so anytime that you hear of the OEM doing something in your region, I find that they're very interesting to go to, because you get new people who've moved in who the teenagers just don't think about these things. And they can't, don't wait for your cats, don't wait for your dogs. They'll find their way and just start walking. Get out. And so a lot of them don't realize how fast. I just remember how fast that Waldo Canyon fire came down the mountain. Very scary that day. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
All right. We appreciate it.
My phone's always available if you want to call. So, thanks.
Okay. All right. Our next item is 6B, refocus of our committees and their purpose. Jared Werner, Public Policy and Communications Manager.
Good morning once again, everybody. Jared Werner. We had this discussion a little bit last year when we were looking at the bylaws changes. And we had opted at the time to kind of just hold on it just because it was worth a longer discussion, and the bylaws changes that we were looking at last year were a little more timely for some other state needs. So now we're bringing this back for that longer discussion. We have 7 committees that the board of directors appoints members to. All of them have different areas of focus. All of them have different purposes. In the process of working with those committees, we have kind of found that over the years that some of those committees really do better if they're more of a coordinating or a working group. And I think the terminology is open for discussion, but a lot of that discussion is like, the focus of the committee is to bring people together, maybe not so much as develop policy or approve plans or approve documents of that nature. And so that's kind of what we're looking at with this proposal. Nothing set in stone. We're looking for feedback. But in that discussion, we're looking at creating a separate working group category that is different than the committees. And I've outlined some of the things that we've bulleted here that would essentially designate what makes this different than a committee. We would still ask the board of directors to still set the scope and purpose of these working groups. But the membership is probably one of the bigger changes, in that the membership would be more staff driven. We would be seeking out the individuals or groups or agencies that make the most sense for that group. We'd open it up for public to join in, because we do have some members of the public who are very passionate about these topics. Right now, the only way for them to get on is either through an appointment through your jurisdictions. Some of the committees do have an at-large process. These working groups would not necessarily select officers or adopt bylaws. The purpose of these working groups is to basically work through the purpose or the scope that is defined by the board. And the meeting topics and operations will be primarily led by staff as opposed as led by the officers or by the board itself. If for some reason in the discussion that these working groups that they decide that there's a policy need that needs to happen, where there's something that needs to change at a more structural level, we are proposing that these working groups would have a committee that they'd be essentially attached to. And if a policy needs to come up, that would work through that committee and then work its way up to the board for approval. We would be looking at these working groups to do something by consensus. And so then it'll actually, the recorded votes would happen through the committee structure. These meetings would still be open to the public and properly noticed, just because there are topics that could ultimately be coming up through the board process, and we want to make sure that we're as transparent as possible. Cheryl, if you don't mind scrolling down just a little bit, I kind of wanted to give a little bit of background on our current committee structure. So as I mentioned, we have 7 committees. Those first 4 have very specific requirements, usually by grants, or they serve a function that is very important to us for fulfilling or just for transparency. So I'll pick on Regional Advisory Council, Transportation Advisory Committee, and Water Quality Management Committee. Those are 3 that are tied to a grant. We have to have those as part of the grants. The Community Advisory Committee does help us serve a public notice function or a public involvement function, especially on transportation issues. But that also models a lot of what our jurisdictions already do with a citizens group that they bounce ideas or at least kick the tires. And we got subject matter experts, but the Community Advisory Committee is kind of that first chance to see how this is going to look at a broader level. And then there's the next 2, the Mobility Coordinating and Air Quality Technical Committee. And these would be the first 2 that we'd be looking at moving into that working group category. So focusing first on mobility coordinating, the name of it implies it is a coordinating group. So we bring together the specialized service, the regional transit providers together, and identify what's working, what's not, what are best practices. Maybe someone has a training coming up and they have a few extra slots in their training session. And so they open it up for other providers to say, hey, listen, we've got the speaker coming in. If you want to fill in these seats, we can get it to you at a lower cost, and if they send them off to a conference. Or if they're looking at, hey, is there an opportunity to collaborate on bigger contracts? Fuel comes to mind, but hey, we're purchasing stuff, we're having a hard time doing these things. Those kind of discussions, very operational focus, very nuts and bolts focus, very much like just how to actually get people from point A to point B and back to point A again. If a policy came up, we recommend going this to the Transportation Advisory Committee, just because it has the most overlap and it does have some crossover in the planning documents. And the second one that we'd be looking at moving to this category would be the Air Quality Technical Committee. This is one where it is primarily subject matter experts who are working on air quality issues, whether that's coming from industry, public health, transportation. We have really good representation from CSU on this committee. And they're primarily focused on attainment efforts and coordinating strategies to keep us in attainment. Similarly to MCC, if a policy is developed, we would recommend this going through the TAC, Transportation Advisory Committee, just because of the overlap, at least at the state level, between air quality and transportation issues. The third group, we're not recommending moving to the working group category at this time. That's the Commission on Aging. That was a city commission that moved over to PPACG a few years ago. The RAC was another one of our aging committees. That one is A, required by grant, but B, provide more of that citizen oversight of the area agency on aging and its spending and programs, whereas the Commission on Aging is really more focused on kind of the bigger picture, collecting data. How do we affect change at a kind of a larger level? Right now they've been kind of working on their own. We haven't had anything come from the commission to the board at this time since I've been here, but we would still recommend keeping them in that committee structure just because of the scope of that committee. I've also attached a draft and an emphasis on draft what a working group's language would look like in the bylaws. If I did it right, hopefully everything in there captures the bullet points earlier in the memo. Open to thoughts, open to discussion. This is not a timely issue. We are looking at, for the MCC and air quality, like if this is ultimately how we decide to go, we'd probably move those into that category this spring or summer. But we are not under any kind of either grant requirements, legal requirements, or anything to have to expedite this. So happy to answer any questions and take any feedback.
Okay, are there any questions? I think this is a really good idea. Go ahead, Commissioner Stone.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. My only question, just in the discussions of this, I know we do have difficulty finding people to serve on our subcommittees in general. For these working groups, has it kind of felt like that we might get greater participation because the commitment is less, shorter, et cetera? What's the thinking behind finding the people to fill these work groups?
I'll speak to the Air Quality Committee because I've been engaged with them, and Jared can maybe speak to the MCC a little bit. But yes, we've had a hard time for the Air Quality Group getting the right folks at the table that are instrumental in identifying emissions reductions activities. All of our jurisdictions would have an opportunity to send somebody to those meetings, even in this work group function. But we've got CSU with great representation, but we're missing a lot of other stakeholders that we think really ought to be there to help us identify what's going on in the region that we can take credit for and report to EPA on, that we're trying to do what we can to reduce the emissions that we do generate. I mean, having somebody from like the Auto Car Dealers Association there, because I know they've got an emissions program associated with their statewide network. I think there's a bunch of kind of missing gaps, missing stakeholder voices at the table. So we'd like the ability to have a little more flexibility to start doing some outreach like that, getting folks like that at the table, public health folks, maybe from our local hospitals and others. So they would be, again, Jared mentioned, they're not going to generate policy and start doing things, but it's maybe identifying what they're doing already or what they could start doing in their own sphere to help us in these specific areas. And this specific one would be around what are they doing as far as reducing emissions. MCC, you gave the example that it's kind of operators with our human service providers and others, our transit providers, and there's some coordination activities that we could have them and others kind of participate in. But anything else you want to?
And I'll just kind of add, you mentioned that especially at some of our smaller jurisdictions, it's just a resources issue. It's just, and I've talked to some of you guys offline about this, you're just thrilled sometimes to have competitive seats for your councils, much less trying to find volunteers to appoint to one of these committees. And so I think part of it is just a logistical part, and what we don't want to be, I'll use the efficiency word, but we don't want to be hamstrung by bureaucracy, so to speak, and that right now, if someone is on that committee, they have to be appointed or they have to go through an appointment process through a jurisdictional appointment. Board has to approve it. And so someone who might be interested and it's like, oh, well, we have this position and it can go through, maybe it's a jurisdictional appointment. It has to go through your procedures and it has to go through our procedures before they can actually sit and vote. At-larges are a little bit more flexible, but it still requires you guys to approve those appointments, which just adds time. And it adds a level of formality, which I don't think these groups really are needing. Like I said, well, the plan would still be to publicly notice and do these just because the topics could come through as potential action in the future. But a lot of times, like, we just need the right person at the table. And if they have to go through an appointment process or have to go through other stuff, it just takes a couple months just to get them at the table. And so I think it's just a logistical part where this adds a little bit of flexibility to be able to still do the work that the board approves through the scope of the committee or this working group, but without kind of the red tape that it takes to just get someone across. By having these working groups still tied to a committee, these committees would still follow the same thing. These are still appointed by your boards or the at-large process, that you guys would still have that level of control for it to go through the committee process. I hope that answers the question a little bit. Or did I avoid it? Okay.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. and having sat on the Commission for Aging for 3.5 years, I could see this would be useful for as a tool to request industry workers' input, like within the senior aging realm, without them having to make that commitment to the monthly meeting and all of the other work they do. So I could see it'd be useful. Just want to frame it to where it's like they get to provide input, not they get to join another work group. You know what I mean? Because drawing that information to be able to make these boards more productive and really gather the input from the community will be really helpful. So I think it's a good idea. You just want to make it sound more like they're giving something, not having to commit to something.
Right.
Yeah, I run away from the word committees. Go ahead, Mayor Thompson.
Yeah, so having been around a while and having been around when MCC really got formed, I think it has a really valuable mission to PPACG that I'm not necessarily willing to lose. And I have concerns of it becoming a working group. Not that I'm downplaying the idea and I want to stop it, but just some of the things, my questions would be, how often are they going to meet? Because I think some of what the improvements we've seen in the service providers in the special needs area have been because they've been meeting monthly in many cases and building those relationships to work together rather than being very siloed off. And I think that's going to be critical right now when we see the budget cuts that are coming. Specialized transit providers are being told to expect anything from a 10 to 25% budget cut. So they're going to have to be working together right now to really, really figure out how to work together. And also, no offense to anyone in this room, but when I first got on PPACG, everything was Colorado Springs centered, and we've worked very, very hard for the last 8 to 10 years to make this a regional board and a regional approach to things. And transportation in Cripple Creek is very different than transportation in Park County, and it's very different in Fountain, it's very different in Colorado Springs. And this MCC group has afforded them the opportunity to get together and really learn about the difficulties in the transportation issues that are going on. So, and then I also have concerns of some type of specialized group coming in, freeing the focus of the meeting and taking over things that are happening. So, and disabled not being represented. We talked a lot about seniors, and Jody, you need to please start including the disabled community in your funding, because 5310 is not just for seniors, it's for seniors and disabled adults. So we often forget that portion of us because any of us can be disabled tonight when we go home, right? Or driving home. So those are just some of my concerns that are very real within this population. And I'm just concerned, and I understand the difficulty of getting people because I kind of made it my mission when I was the chair to drive y'all nuts every month of all the boards that needed people and emailing people and trying to get people on. So I'd like to find a happy middle ground, and I'm not happy with this one today. And so I just want to know when they're going to meet. And I'm also concerned of the board coming up with the topics, and they're going to come up with topics that are interest to them. But I want to make sure that the people you're inviting have interest, because there's been things that have come up through MCC that probably haven't been a priority to the staff necessarily, but are as a priority to the providers. And they are already working together to do some of these trainings in general when they have extra seats. They're already doing that on their own. So I don't want this to become a "we're from the government, we're here to help you" working group, right? I want it to be a community group where we work together on regional transportation issues, because that's what we're about as a board. So I don't know where the happy middle ground is, because I get what you're saying about difficulty getting people on there, but there also has been a lot of reward, I feel, from having those meetings monthly. So,
So a happy middle ground might be to continue the work of the mobile coordinating committee and then have the air quality technical committee, which is such a technical area, meet more on a quarterly basis. Now, in any of these, we can write, if they're a coordinating committee, we do want them to have so many meetings a year. But with all the cutbacks coming to the mobile coordinating committee, maybe the happy medium is we don't dissolve that one this year, or even in the next 2 or 3 years until we get through a lot of the cutbacks that are coming. And the air quality technical committee, it's just, I still sit through the greenhouse gas issues at the State Transportation Advisory Committee, and it just goes ooh, right over my head. I can't believe anyone would ever be that smart about something like that.
Do have one last comment is one of the recommendations in the 2050 transportation plan and specialized transportation was to go towards working towards a kind of one call center type thing. And if we don't have a group to be doing that and actively working on it, we're not going to make any progress in that area.
I just wanted to just give another perspective that I do agree with what you're saying, Sharon, and with you too, Holly, but I see an opportunity here as well, as Andy very well or very eloquently said, is that it gives us an opportunity to get some expertise on board and input from those working in the industry or having to deal with this same from different perspectives to give us some great input in addition to what you're describing and our committees the way they are. I just think it's a great opportunity and I would hope that we would find a way to mix that in. Thank you.
And to your point, Mayor Thompson, I think we're trying to find that happy medium. And I think this is what we're trying to do. So would love any feedback because I think we're trying to find that balance of the formality and you know, we want to make sure that this group can actually accomplish what it needs to get done. As opposed to, you know, being limited or we have the right people at the table who might come and it's like, hey, we're just getting together without that formality of a committee. So I am all ears in terms of how to do that because I think that's what we're trying to do is make these groups more effective in the process. So.
Okay, this item we will take some time to think about. How does that sound?
This is really good feedback. That's why we just brought it for, this is the initial conversation. But as Jared said, we're looking for flexibility, being nimble, getting the right experts around the table. So we'll brainstorm further and bring it back for more discussion. But yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
So I can do the public service announcement now. At the end of your agenda is a list of committees at the Pikes-Peak Area Council of Governments. Please look over your jurisdiction to see if you have anyone in mind who might like to apply.
I'll share that I can say that our staff is actively advertising for our vacancies from our area. And I'm not sure where she's at. I haven't heard yet, but I know that she's actively looking for all of those. Thank you.
Okay, so under our other reports, we have the minutes from the Transportation Advisory Committee, the Community Advisory Committee, the Mobility Coordinating Committee, the RAC, and the Pikes Peak Commission on Aging. The Air Quality Technical Committee did not meet, and the Water Quality Management Committee did not meet. And so then we will go all the way down to the CDOT monthly update. And you told me your name, but I've already forgotten it. Okay, thank you, Andy. We're welcome to our meeting and we're ready to pepper you with questions, I'm sure.
All right, I'm Andy. Nice to see you all. I'm here to field your questions regarding CDOT Region 2 projects.
Please resurface Highway 85 between South Academy and exit 128. I ask every month. I'm just a squeaky wheel. The potholes are intense. So it's my one chance per month.
Well, asset management and protection is something that the department is really focused on right now and moving forward over the next few years. So we can expect a lot more resurfacing type of projects and other types of projects like that to strengthen our existing assets.
So I will say, and then we'll have Commissioner Stone. The two projects that I've experienced this month, I think Fillmore to Garden of the Gods is going very well. Still, you know, we get some slowdowns there, but it's going very well. And I actually was able to drive through the Peterson project on Peterson and Powers. It's looking fantastic there. So Commissioner Stone.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I might be beating Mayor Case to this question, but I see the project in here just as north of Woodland Park improvements. there's, I think, two different projects possibly, unless they've been combined into one. One is like widening and safety that starts spring 2025, but then there's a resurfacing project that was, I think, kind of tied into the US 24 west resurfacing from roughly just west of Woodland Park over to county line roughly. Just want to make sure that's still on the list and that
Yes.
has been contracted.
That's correct. Yes, that's still on the list. The project is out. If it's not out for advertisement now, it will be soon. It's scheduled to go to construction.
Okay, my understanding was, and you're filling in, so thank you, is that it had gone out for bid and had been awarded was the last that I heard. I don't know if you know.
I know of the project and I know there's no change to what was planned in terms of when it would go to construction.
Still 2025?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Eric, I can share from our meeting last week that the widening and the drainage and all of that that's going on between Evergreen Heights and Kelly's, I believe, or maybe, yeah, just where the other project was earlier. That's actually getting started. And they have crews on site doing some locating and different things right now. The paving from Evergreen Heights to 24 on 67 is rolled into that repaving that was done and stopped, and now we're going to continue it on to Florissant, I believe, or somewhere in that area. That's also going to happen, and that section of 67 is going to be incorporated into that. And I do know that it's going to be this summer.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
didn't see it specifically on the list, so thought I should ask. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Mitchell, our next slide is Central Front Range.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And while we're making suggestions, there is a stretch of highway on 24 from a little bit west of Lake George up to Round Mountain Campground, I would say, or County Road 31, that is falling apart rapidly. It is alligator to the point where it is going to start being completely destructed. So I just don't know. That's a stretch of road that tourists drive, but not many, people. So just wanted to bring it to your attention because it's gonna fall apart really fast. Thank you.
I'll take that to our maintenance department.
Okay, are there any additional questions? All right, thank you very much, Ann.
Sure.
You got it the first time down. We'll give John more trouble next month. We've already done item H, which is the CDOT monthly update. Letter G is the statewide transportation advisory committee update. We met. Jeff Sudemeyer talked about the budget, which is all up in air, as we've heard from Commissioner Parsons. And we also talked about greenhouse gas regulations. There is in the budget the Colorado State Union that proposes raises. So the administration expenses at CDOT actually went up in the proposed budget. We think there's going to be some negotiations on how large the raises for state employees are going to be next year in the Joint Budget Committee, but that is actually a part of the Joint Budget Committee process for all of the state raises at the state level, not just CDOT. So we'll see how that's going, but I don't know as if the CDOT budget's going to look very good by the end of May. So just hold on to your hats there. And the other thing I wanted to ask, and Amy, you might know this, do we have a Central Front Range representative on the statewide Transportation Advisory Committee?
I do not know. I know Nick Bredsnecker, our Director of Public Works, sits on the local advisory, but I don't know if we have anyone appointed. I'd love to. If there's a vacancy, we will take care of that.
Well, a guy named Commissioner Elsner retired.
Yes.
So there is a vacancy, and I didn't notice when we came up to Central Front Range if we had a report this time. So we'll want to make sure that that Andy will look into that with John Leosados and figure out how to get that done.
I will get a hold of me, Andy. I'll put it on my to-do list and it will be done. Thank you.
Yes. And now we are to the Front Range Passenger Rail update.
So the executive staff has been working with the governor on these budget cuts that we're seeing statewide as well. And they did cut the funding, which would cut staff. We still have not replaced our executive director. The interim is doing just fine. I think that will probably go on for quite some time just due to funding. But I did want to bring up just last week, Congressman Jeff Crank did present the Block Act bill that would prevent the Department of Transportation from funding infrastructure projects in sanctuary cities like Denver. And he went on to say if Denver wants to incentivize keeping their citizens safe, that he would consider funding there. But he also said it would certainly seem like they can do that. But he would incentivize Castle Rock to Pueblo would be the section that he would consider funding based on, and I'm just the messenger. I'm just reading what he said. So looking.
Don't shoot the messenger
Don't
here.
shoot the messenger, but just to for this board's purview that the congressman is looking to block Front Range passenger rails to Denver, anything north, which is what is the priority right now is north. So, you know, he's now saying that he would fund Castle Rock to Pueblo due to sanctuary city status. And so that is kind of the update that we're all talking about right now on the board and what that looks like. And Commissioner Mulvady from Parker and I are planning to meet with Congressman Crank about this and as soon as we can. I know they're doing their own budget right now in DC, but hopefully we can maybe get some more South tracks now with this. We'll never let a crisis go to waste in this situation. So that's really the only update I have on Front Range passenger rail.
Okay, that's fascinating. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Commissioner, or I will upgrade your salary
Y'all
too.
keep upgrading
Mayor
me. I want to
Thompson.
upgrade the salary, okay? That's fine. Okay.
I
Corey,
can
is that
put a
what you-
penny in the
okay.
jar once a month.
All right. Yeah. Hey, yeah, I even make more than you make, huh? Yeah, okay. That's pretty sad. I listened in on that meeting and I really appreciated getting the invite to that. It was fascinating. And one of the things, some of the notes I wrote down, because it's my first time being in on the meeting, was it was fascinating. They said they think it will improve freight delivery in Colorado because of upgrades to the rails, but while they're doing that, it could mess with freight delivery or doing that. But they're basing all their numbers on every 90 minutes running, so 10 round trips per day at 79 miles per hour.
Right.
I would continue to express my concerns with my community having an additional 10 freight trains going through there at 79 miles per hour every day, and the impacts that's going to have on us regionally with traffic and greenhouse gas emissions not being able to be met because people are spending more time. You know, and I've got a middle school on the west side of the tracks and elementary schools in the middle of the tracks and a high school on the east side of the tracks. So people got to get through. And so I'm going to be the squeaky wheel while I'm around on that one. So
How many intersections do you have there? There's Security Widefield has one and you have one that are.
right, but we have trains on the tracks on the west side of town and the east side of town.
Okay.
So we have two sets of tracks
Yeah.
that go
So
through.
none of them are bridged. So that becomes, that's
We
the.
don't even want to go down that conversation.
Oh, no.
No.
Mm-mm.
Might as well.
No.
I do know Chair Nevitt and the executive staff will be doing their road trip, and they will be coming out and talking to each person in you are on the contact list all the way. I believe they're going to talk all the way to Trinidad, but for sure at Pueblo. So you will have your opportunity to sit down with them as they start meeting with every jurisdiction. Just so you know, that will be coming this summer. That is in the plan. So you will have more than an opportunity to be squeaky.
I'm going to keep at it. I'm really good. Thank you, Linda.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Crow Iverson. Let's go on to our executive director's report. Andy.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Just 3 items briefly. One thing I want to mention is we have on our radar a financial policies work group that Carol's going to be leading. It came up a couple of months back, end of 2024. We've got 2 members, Mayor Case, Councilmember Jennifer Hirschberg from City of Fountain. If anybody else is interested in working with us, working with Carol as we develop policies we'll bring to the board probably mid-year here in 2025, let me know or let Carol know. We're going to get that started fairly soon, building a list of things we need to address. Bit overdue in putting something together to bring to the board. I mean, by years. So it's timely. So we're going to start digging into that fairly soon. So just wanted to mention that. The second item, I think I shared this letter with the board, but on air quality issues, I've been working with my counterparts in Phoenix and Salt Lake City to put together a letter that we submitted to the new EPA Administrator, Lee Zeldin. Went out about 2 weeks ago, along with 7 other metropolitan planning organizations across the Intermountain West. So 10 of us signed on just to welcome the new administrator to his role and let him know about the work that we've been doing to try to get this on EPA's radar to help us out with our high levels of background pollution that we don't control. It's about 80% of our pollution, as we've estimated. So anyways, we fired that off. We've gotten some decent responses so far, and actually got a text from my counterpart from Salt Lake City on Monday, who was at the National League of Cities conference back in DC, where Administrator Zeldin was also addressing the group. And he said that he's aware that there are challenges and he's going to help regions that have geographic constraints and other constraints help us in our attainment designation. So we're making a difference. It's a tough issue, but we're persistent and we're going to keep moving forward on that. So just wanted to share that. And then third item, bittersweet note, we're losing 2 employees in March and early April. Melanie Hendrickson, who's our direct services lead in our AAA, is going to be retiring. Happy for her. She manages our case management group that does Medicare open enrollment process for us each year. So really sorry to see Melanie leave, but like I said, happy for her. We're also losing Jessica Bechtel. Many of you know Jessica that have been around for a while. Jess was our office manager for a long time. Left, came back, has been working as our transportation planner, managing our TIP. I don't know that Jess is here today, is she? So anyway, she's moving out of state. She and her family, great opportunity. We're going to miss Jess dearly. She's been with us for about 7 years or so. So just wanted to let you know that this week, I believe, is Jess B's last week with us. So bittersweet there as well. So that's all I've got.
At the end of all our Jessica, we had so many Jessicas for a while.
We have one in
Yeah.
our GIS shop, Jessica
Yeah.
Sheeran. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, come on up. And I'm missing another. Do we have another Jessica still? We did. We're up to 4, I believe. We're down to 1. Sherry.
Thank you. Good morning. Sherry Hoffman, HR Generalist, PPACG. Just wanted to introduce our new artist. They are a local artist here in Colorado Springs. Their name is Aves Willman. They do sit on the board at the Pikes Peak Art Council, so we're super appreciative that they decided to choose us to display their artwork. They are an illustrator, a comic artist, and also a graphic designer. So
Thank you. So next month on our agenda, what day is the city council election?
Well, the first weekend of April.
April 1st. So we would like to see Michelle here to honor her next month. And then Yolanda will be here also to honor. So we do hope they'll come so that we can honor them as they leave their service on the board. And we've enjoyed working with both of you over the years, and look forward to you being able to get back to your business too. I think city council, mayor, anything is a big labor of love in public service. So we thank you for your service.
You can have one more meeting because the
After
election
April
won't be
1st?
certified until
Yeah.
middle of the month. Yeah. Not that you're counting the days.
Well, we said goodbye to Commissioner Vanderwerf, and then he still had to
He
come
kept
back for
coming
the
back.
January meeting.
You know.
Okay, member entity announcements. Anyone still has anything special coming up? Go ahead, Mayor Dixon.
I just want to announce that this week DOLA let us know that they've set aside $1 million for us for our bridge project. Special thanks to Karen. I see her sitting out there. She's really helped us quite a bit in getting that. It actually may work in our favor that things got paused because now we can say we have $1 million worth of funds available to match.
Do we still have the ice castles going on? For the ice?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just checked on my phone and Ice Castles, because of the warm weather, is now closed for the season. That being said, there's no shortage of great things to do in Cripple Creek and plenty of rooms for overnight stays. So this is a great time to take advantage of off-season rates in Cripple Creek.
Okay, and we do. Yes.
Believe it or not, that is a concern every year when they set this up, is the water has to go somewhere, and you would not believe how many millions of gallons of water are currently pouring off of that down into Jeff's not here anymore, but into Cripple Creek and down into that basin.
Well, at least the nice thing is it's very cold water, so you have to be brave to go raft that. We'd rather wait till the summer when it's a little warmer. Anything else other than the city election? So,
Madam Chair, you do have Mayor LaKine with his hand raised.
oh, Mayor LaKind, I'm sorry, I'm not very good at paying attention to the room. Thank you.
It's
Mayor
okay.
LaKind.
I wanted to just announce that Monument kicked off their comprehensive plan update. It's called Monument 2040. We have a website dedicated to that, monument2040.com. We had 17 focus groups during the first week kickoff, and we had participation from state level down through the county. Various cities had sent their representatives, as well as HOA representation and citizens. And so for those who would like to participate over the next 18 months or just follow along, monument2040.com.
Thank you. That is a
Putting
very,
that-
very good
putting that-
project.
Putting that DOLA money to use before they take it from us.
Yes. Okay, Commissioner Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to piggyback on what Andy said earlier. We were granted a raise grant, which 24 hours before the deadline was changed to the build grant. And we actually jumped through the hoops and modified 40 pages of documents to the bit of changes they made under that grant. And so I guess perseverance does pay. So we are thrilled. This is focused on Bailey. We've got a bridge replacement we need to do, and we need to revitalize Bailey's traffic flow and such to make it a little bit more tourist friendly. So we are thrilled. And Karen, thank you for your help. Nick, appreciate you very much. So good news.
Okay, any additional announcements? Okay, seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.
And by the way, if anybody wants birthday cake, I brought some in from last night's party.
Sit with them until I could get there.
Last night,
And I said, you go with him to make,
but there's
I said
cake
to make sure.
left
that
over.
you
It's
guys
Costco cake.
have checked the typos. And they didn't, because they sent it to me and
A
they,
big 6-0 yesterday.
Oh, isn't that tough?
because they're
I
bored.
don't know. I mean,